Hi, everybody. I'm Nancy Adkins. I'm a Sunrise based family law attorney, and this is my webinar for you guys about the do's and the don'ts of separation and divorce. So, I just want to welcome everybody to our presentation. Um, and let's go ahead and get started. I do like to start and end on time. We are set here for about 30 minutes. I also want to make this a very interactive um, session for you guys. So as we move through the slides, please do not hesitate to stop and ask me a question, because at the end of the day, this is about you and what you need and what you want and how you're going to be successful moving through your divorce, and knowing that that's a process. So understanding that it's a process and things take time. And these are some guideposts for you along the way as you move through your divorce. So let's go ahead and get started. We've got the 30 minutes, and just raise your hand. In the bottom section, you'll see where it says raise your hand, and just let me know that you want to ask a question, and I will stop and ask your question at that time. So we'll go ahead and get started. Any questions before we get started about the housekeeping? Everybody's good? Okay, great. Awesome. All right. Well, happy Friday. Where else would you want to be on a Friday at noon besides do's and don'ts of separation and divorce? So here we go. Some things that you want to do, some things that you don't want to do. Welcome. I'm so glad that you guys are all here and that you signed up. The best way for you to make a great decision is getting educated on what your options and your choices are, and what's better for you and how you conduct yourself moving through your divorce. So the first thing that I would like to talk about with you today is your mental health. And, I'm sure probably some of you have already been hearing about this, even like with the COVID crisis and things of that nature. It's really, really important to maintain your mental health. And anybody who's a high performer has someone working with them on their mental health. So whether you have a therapist or a counselor or a licensed clinical social worker, just make sure that you have somebody that you're able to work with and talk with. And it's not just the professionals. I mean, I have a therapist, but just making sure that you maintain good mental health. And sometimes that means doing some reflection. Sometimes that means making sure that you have clarity and intention and focus on what it is that you want and what it is that you need. So make sure that you take care of your mental health along the way, and that'll help prepare you for success as you move through your divorce. So it's okay to feel whatever that you feel. You can be mad, you can be upset, you can be sad, you can be disappointed, you can be angry. There's a whole gamut of emotions that you're going to run through. And the fun part is they come without warning. They just show up. They just all of a sudden are there, and you're feeling a certain way, and sometimes you don't always understand how you're feeling. Just know that you are going to feel what you're going to feel, and that it's okay whatever you're feeling. Just make sure that you keep that in check, and make sure that you focus on yourself during the time. Prioritize your emotional health like we talked about, and your well-being. And then see how much you can have activities that you engage in that'll help lift you up. So that's that. So I've always found that somebody wants the divorce and somebody doesn't want the divorce. And so for the people who want the divorce, even when you want the divorce, it's still appropriate to grieve the process. So, like for my personal experience, when I was going through my divorce, I was the one that chose to initiate the divorce, but it doesn't change that I didn't miss my husband, or that I wasn't going to experience that he wasn't going to be in the house anymore, or, doing some of the things that we did together. So there is still a process of grieving the loss of the relationship. And that's one of those things that you're going to go through as you go through this divorce process. So the next thing that we can talk about too is practicing self-care. I like baths. I like candles. I like soft music. Mood lighting is nice, where it's a little softer rather than harsh lighting, or something that might be a little more. I also try to take walks and get out and do fresh air. It's nice. We have some sun today. That's been it's been raining a lot lately, and especially with the storm. So keep yourself moving, get outside and walk around a little bit if you can. and do a little bit of self-reflection. I try to get up in the morning and journal a little bit in my diary about what I want, what I need, and what my intention is for the day. So just make sure that you're practicing some self-care along the way. So this is a new normal. And just like I was talking about, like in my situation, I stayed in the house, but it's just me in the house. One second. So there is an adjustment in the new normal of what things are going to look like as you move forward, and what your housing arrangements will be. And, you're going to do the grocery shopping, or, some things are going to change. But what's going to happen is you start to develop a new routine for yourself. So, you have to change, maybe what breakfast looks like, or, am I going into work today? Am I, what am I doing on the weekends? Do I want to go to a football game? Do I want to go to a painting class? There's a lot of different things that you can be looking at, but it's important to have a routine so that you're up at 7 and that you're out at 8, and, try to have some lunch at noon, and sort of give yourself some guideposts in a routine. And the routine will help give you some sense of normalcy as you move through this process. So the other thing that you can do too is to look ahead and to plan something for your future. Maybe you want to take a trip. Maybe you want to learn a new language. Maybe there's some skill that you want to. Perhaps you want to focus on some writing, write a book, or there's different things you can do that way. But you want to start to make some plans for yourself and do something fun for your future. So maybe you just do a road trip. I've got some girlfriends and we hang out and we try to do something with each other once a month. So whether we go out on a boat, or sometimes we take a bike ride and we go touring down in Coconut Grove and do stuff like that, or we'll go and see a movie. We actually took a trip to Disney World one time too. That was kind of fun to do the food and wine festival. So I think that you have to look at what you really like to do, and then figure out what it is and go do it and make that plan. I mean, get out and go do it. Life is not going to wait for you. So get in there and participate, look ahead and make some plans, and take care of you. So this is also support groups. This is important. And again, this is really your choice or your style, depending on whether you're spiritual or if you're more social, or if you're, it really depends on what you like. There are support groups on Facebook. There are support groups in the churches and the local communities. There's actually a support group at Nova. Some of the churches hold support groups. So it's just depending. So you might look at your church or your synagogue. You might look at a spiritual leader for support. You might go to, excuse me, if you have a therapist can make recommendations for you on support groups that are in the community. The other thing that's kind of cool about support groups is it gives you a sense of other people that are similarly situated and what they're going through, and they can give you advice and tips on how your situation could be better based on the experience they're having. So you can go through that as well. But it's definitely good to get like a community viewpoint as well as the individual viewpoint. So if you have the individual viewpoint and then you start to talk with other people, and it gives you a chance to meet some new people and make some acquaintances, and maybe even make a friend. And who knows, you might find somebody in that support group, and it's easier for you guys to identify because you're both going through the divorce at the same time, and you guys can talk about some of the experiences that you're having as far as the divorce and what's going on with you, and depending on what's at issue in your case. So the support groups are really good for you guys also. So get out there, get involved. Sometimes they meet once a week, sometimes they meet once a month. It just depends on what your taste is in terms of what you like. And sometimes, initially when you're going through the divorce process, you have friends and family. But if your friends or your family hasn't been through this process, then it may be a little bit different for you to talk with somebody who is going through the process versus somebody who's not going through the process. And that may be the advantage that you have in a support group over, say your friends and family. And not that your friends and family won't help you, but it's a different way of looking at things. Okay, so here we go. I wanted to go through a little bit of the do's and the don'ts of going through that, because that's really why we're here and what we're talking about. So I think that I'm going to go through the do's and the don'ts of the separation. Does anybody have any questions about what I've gone through so far? If you guys have any questions, just there's a little hand down in the bottom center of the Zoom call. So if you have any questions, just hit that little button that says raise your hand, and then I'll know that you want to ask a question about the material that I'm covering this afternoon. So without further ado, if I don't have any questions, then let's go through the 5 things that you should do and then the 5 things that you absolutely shouldn't do. Okay, so let me go through the first one. And that is, well, it's funny, divorce without drama. We try to do the best that we can. If you can stay above the emotional fray, and this is what I would tell all of you, is to try to, you always have the emotions and the way that you're feeling. And then, you have to do a fact check and sort of stay into your intuition and your gut, and make sure that you're paying attention to how you feel about those things. But it doesn't have to be a nightmare. It can be mature. It can be, how you really, really set the tone for your case can make or break you. So try to keep the drama down in your case as much as possible. Let's go through the 5 do's and don'ts. Okay, so the first do is to be courteous. Courteous is always in good check. It's always in good form to just be courteous. So you can, even though you might be mad at somebody, you might be sad at somebody, it doesn't make it right for you to not be courteous. So you should always try to be as courteous no matter what the subject matter is that's coming up. So you want to keep the communication between yourself and the other parties as polite as considerate as possible. And if you find yourself getting angry or emotional, you can certainly pause the conversation, and you could pause it for 10 seconds, or you could pause it for 10 minutes, or you could pause it for 10 days or 10 hours. But it's important to pause where you don't send an email and you don't say something you're going to later regret. If you feel your emotions racing, then it's a good time to pause. And just make sure that you can be courteous in the communication that's going between you and the other parties, whether it's your soon-to-be ex-spouse or if you guys have children. Just make sure that you're being courteous. So this is our big first do not, and some people, these are our overachievers, who will try to buy a new house, or they'll try to start a new job and go through a divorce all at the same time. And, the divorce is difficult enough that you shouldn't have to put something else on yourself, like getting a different job or changing jobs or getting a job or trying to move to a different city, or even just trying to move to a new house. I mean, I could be moving up the street and it's still an ordeal to leave one house and move into another. And that's just a lot to take on. You have enough stress and you have enough anxiety from the divorce and what you're going through. So it's important not to make those important life decisions while you're going through the divorce. Get through the divorce and then figure out what you're going to do for a job. If that's what you're doing, you might just keep working. You might just stay in the same place. But one of the things that I am recommending is not to make any drastic life changes during the separation. Once the divorce is processed and you're done with that, then you can make some changes in your life based on what you need. You may not make any changes at all, but don't be that person who just throws everything up and says, I'm going to get a new job and a new house and a new everything. It's really not cause for a makeover. So don't make any changes during the separation. Okay, so the next thing is to keep an open mind, to resolve the divorce as amicably as possible. Usually what I will tell people during the consultation process or doing the onboarding is a lot of the cases will take 6 months. So anywhere from 3 months to 6 months to resolve. Most of the cases resolve at mediation. And there's about 5% of the cases that actually go beyond mediation. So it's better if you can try to get the case resolved. Some divorces are long and contentious, but you definitely want to work with your spouse and your attorney to resolve your divorce in the fashion that makes the most sense for your life. But it's important not to invest the emotional energy, because there's a cost or there's a value, depending on how you look at it, in terms of having the case drag out, or having it go on and on and on and on. So think about those things that, and I usually tell my clients that they should make a list of pros and cons and what's most important to them and what's not as important to them. And that helps give you some guidepost as far as what you can let go of and what you're willing to hang on to as you guys move through this process of the divorce, and you understand what's at issue and what you can give up. It'll help you to negotiate and get a little closer to the settlement agreement, when that time comes that you guys are preparing and setting up for your mediation, and what you can let go of and what you want to hold on to. Okay, so this is an interesting one where it says don't move out of your home without consulting an attorney. And there's so many different like conventional wisdoms about whether you move out or you don't move out. And so at least talk with your attorney about your specific situation. I've had couples where they absolutely both stayed in the house all the way through trial. And, there's a certain level of, the benefit of being in the home where the mortgage is getting paid, the power is getting paid, the water's getting paid, to an extent, the food bill's getting paid. And there are benefits to being in the marital home during the divorce process. It's tougher when both of you are there, because there's going to be some, stressful situations that come up. And there's also legal consequences of your decision to move out and how that's going to affect you during the divorce process. So just make sure that you talk with your attorney about whether you should move out of your home. So sometimes it makes sense and sometimes it doesn't make sense. I've actually consulted and advised with clients on both ways. It just really depends on your specific situation. My only point here is not to move out until you've talked with an attorney about how that's going to affect you in your divorce process, especially relative to not so much the equitable distribution, but what that's going to look like for you during the process and what your expenses are going to look like and how you're going to be supporting yourself and what does that look like for the children. So you've got to think about the time sharing and all the issues that are going to come up, and whether you stay in the house or if you decide to go somewhere else. Is that going to be a temporary situation? Are you prepared to engage into a permanent situation? So there's just a lot of things to think about in terms of whether you should move out during the process or if you should wait. Okay, so what is important is to think about how the divorce impacts your children. So you certainly want to think about that. It's always been my experience, and the children are very quick to blame themselves. Like if they would have behaved differently, or if they would have acted differently, or if they would have done something differently, that maybe things would be different. And, just like the parents, the children grieve the process of what was a good situation and what was a comfortable home, that there's going to be the new normal and there's going to be some changes for them. And, they should be focused on school and they should be focused on their friends and not having to worry about what's going on with mom or what's going on with dad. And I always try to tell my clients that the divorce is an adult situation and the children shouldn't be involved in it to the extent that they aren't. They're going to be affected by it based on the time sharing and things that come up during the divorce process. But it isn't important for them to be dealing with child support or alimony or some of the other things that will come up in the case. And maybe just things that maybe mommy and daddy are fighting about that really shouldn't be involved in the children's conversation. What is important for them is to have a conversation with them, that's relevant to their age level. So if you've got a 5-year-old, you're going to have a 5-year-old conversation with that child about what's happening with mommy and daddy and how the two of you are going to be living in different houses, and things of that nature. But if you have a 15-year-old, then, that's a certainly different conversation that you're going to have with your 15-year-old about the divorce and the process, and to explain the process and to answer questions for them. But it's really not a situation where you want to be, bad mouthing the other parent or speaking negatively about the situation, because you as the parent with the children, doesn't matter what side you're on, you as the parent are supposed to encourage the relationship with the other parent. That's one of the first factors that we look at in the time sharing analysis. So really, really think about how the separation and the divorce will impact your children. And I certainly would encourage you to have a conversation with them about it. And don't make your kids choose sides. It's bad to create that polarity in the situation. So make sure you have that conversation with them, and then don't drag them. It made sense. It's do not drag the kids into the conflict. So I think I kind of covered that as far as what the talking points are that I've taken care of here. So just make sure. The other thing that's important with the children is that you have a plan. Instead of being reactive to what's going on around you, you can sort of map out what this will look like for the children moving forward. You can certainly have a conversation with your attorney and family and friends about what the new schedule looks like, what the new responsibilities are going to be. We talk about time sharing. We talk about talking with the other parent when you're not with them, how it affects homework, how it affects bedtime, how it affects the routine, the school schedule, etc. So just make sure that you have a plan, and make sure that you're doing what you can to protect your kids each step of the way. And so that will be that. And then we did, it's funny, we talked about that in the beginning, but this is one of my do's, and that's to take care of your mental health, because this is one of the most stressful experiences that people will ever have. I think the only other thing that's more stressful than the divorce is to actually lose somebody. So hopefully none of you have lost anybody close to you, but if you have, that's probably the only thing that's more stressful than the divorce, because, if you think about that promise that everybody made about, to have and to hold and forever, and then, that promise gets broken, for better, for worse, it is a very, very stressful experience. So there's just so much for you to think about. And whether it's the finances or, dividing up the assets and the liabilities, and how the, time sharing is going to work. And, it's not just the impact on you, but it's also the impact on your family, and how your friends are going to be affected by it. I had a conversation with some friends of mine, because they were friends of my now ex-husband. And, it really depends on what is appropriate for you. But, I was okay with my friends still being friends with him if that's what they wanted to do. I just wanted that friendship to be independent of my friendship or my relationship with them. And as long as they had things in common or did things together, then I really didn't have an objection. But I think that you need to set some good boundaries with your friends and with your family as well. I don't know if you want your family to take sides. It just really depends on the style that you have in terms of whether you want someone to take sides. But I certainly kind of remain neutral with my family and with my friends as I was going through the divorce process. That the divorce, I understood the divorce process was important for me. And then I certainly wanted to have a conversation with them about how it would affect them. And I know that, like, one of my personal experiences, I did have a friend of mine reach out to me and ask, hey, could I reach out to your then husband and have a conversation with him about, some of the things that you've been sharing with me? And I asked her not to. I didn't want her to intervene into that process, because I was in a place in my relationship that it was really going to be up to him to step up and do what he needed to do. I had set expectations with him, and whether he was going to meet them was going to be up to him. I thought I was pretty clear on what the expectations were if he was going to be interested in working on the relationship. That's the other, while we're on the subject of mental health, and that's one of the things I think that is important is, if the two of you want to work on the relationship, then the two of you want to work on the relationship. But if one of you doesn't want to work on the relationship, there's absolutely nothing that the other person can do. And that's typically what I find. And that's why this mental health piece is so super important, because it's difficult to deal with the rejection, and it's difficult to deal with the you don't have a choice about it. And you're put into a situation that you didn't ask for. And a lot of people get surprised by it, or they get blindsided by it because you think that everything is going just fine. And then all of a sudden, one day you get, an announcement, or, it's funny. I had one situation where I was talking with a lady and she thought everything was fine. And they were driving back from Naples, which is about a 2-hour ride between here and there. And they went from having a beautiful weekend vacation in Naples to the car ride of 2 hours, where the guy told her, by the way, it's not working out. I've made all these arrangements. I'm moving out. We're getting a divorce. And that's a pretty quick car ride. So for what it's worth, that's just one example of, people think things are fine and the next thing they're not. So I think that's why the mental health comes into play as much as it does, because you need to have a really good skill set in terms of what's coming at you, how it comes at you, why it comes at you, when it comes at you, and the pace that it comes at you sometimes. And so the mental health is important then too, because the first thing to go is overlooking your own self-care. So just make sure that you give yourself time and space and resources, and those things that you need to take care of you. The analogy that I would give you is much like if anybody's ever flown in a plane, and they always tell you for the emergency preparedness that the oxygen mask will drop down, and you got to put the oxygen mask on yourself first and then everybody else around you. And the same principle is true in the divorce, where you have got to make sure that you're okay, and do those things that you need to do to take care of yourself on a regular basis, because then you can make yourself available and be the best version of you for everybody else that is involved in your situation, and making sure that you take care of you. So that's super, super important as well. There's another do not, and the do not is not to share on social media. It's okay to talk about, like if you want to update that you're going through a divorce process, but what you don't want to do is, be mean or belittle the other person on social media, or engage in your, I've had people, and I see it on Facebook. It has nothing to do with my practice, but I see people doing it on Facebook on a regular basis, where they talk about the children and they talk about the new honey, and they'll see pictures of dad with the new girlfriend and whatever they're doing, and they're truly engaging in warfare on Facebook over what's happening with the children and what's happening with the new honey, or whatever's going on with that. And that is just not a good thing. Or people will try to just engage in these smear campaigns. So if you have any doubts about what to share on social media, then the rule of thumb would be not to share. I would suggest that you don't share on social media. And if you feel comfortable with social media because you have a big family, or you have a lot of friends, and you want to, we just had this storm come through, and Facebook is a great way to let everybody know that you're okay, or, that you're safe, and things of that nature. So if you wanted to do a broad post about letting people know that this is what you're going through, then that's fine, as long as it's objective and fair and short. That's the other thing I would tell you, is keep it short, sweet, and to the point, that it's very fact-based, and that you try to keep the emotional piece out of it, and that you're not slinging allegations or making accusations to the other side in social media. So I see a lot of that. And if you were a client of mine, I would tell you not to even engage, because it is something that they can discover in the process of going through the divorce. And the judge can see how the two of you are treating each other on the social media. So social media is fair game, whether it's Facebook or LinkedIn or TikTok or Instagram, or whatever your channel of choice is, YouTube. All that stuff is in bounds when it comes to discovery and potentially being subjected to evidence in your case. So if you could stay off social media altogether, that would be great. And if you do want to share on social media, please keep it short, sweet, to the point, and try to keep the emotions out of it. So one of the other things that you do want to do during your divorce is to get your finances organized. I talk to a lot of people, and they have no idea even where the credit card statement is, or how to get the mortgage statement, or what is the house worth, how much money do I have in my bank account? How much money do I have in my retirement plan? So one of the first things that I always tell my clients is get the finances together. It's also one of the first things that we look at in the divorce process is filling out a financial affidavit. So part of getting that financial affidavit filled out is making sure that you get your finances organized. You should work with a financial planner and potentially prepare a budget. And that's going to help you look at what you have, what the facts are, and what your situation is going to look like moving forward, and helps you to make decisions about what's going to work for you and what doesn't work for you, and really truly what you can afford, and what your expenses are monthly and what your income is monthly. So do you need to get a job? Do you need more income? Do you need a roommate? But getting the finances together helps you begin to answer that question. So get your finances in order, and that's going to be a great step for you to take as you move through this process. Okay, so do not, and this is kind of one of my favorites. I mentioned something this morning to one of my consultants, how, Google is great to get some information. I think I was looking something up the other day about how to change the battery in my car key, or I think the battery went out in my thermostat. So I was just trying to figure out how to do it. It wasn't a big deal, but Google or YouTube or somebody said, oh, hey, here's how you do it. And here's a 2-minute presentation on how you do it. But one of the things that you shouldn't be doing is becoming the Google lawyer. And that's kind of a running joke in my profession, that we have people who call and they say, I looked this up and I looked that up and I saw this and I saw that. And I know I appreciate my clients when they bring the information to me. But what happens is when people are looking up information on the internet, there tends to be a lot of it out there. You don't know who to trust and who knows what they're talking about or who's trustworthy. That's really at the end of the day, the principle behind this is the trusted advisor. So make sure that you have an attorney that you're working with, a professional that you're working with who is a trusted advisor, because they carry a license to give you that advice. It took me 3 years to get there, a long 3 years, and a lot of studying and a lot of books, and a lot of exams. So the internet is great for information, but you have to be careful about the kind of information that you're getting. And sometimes the information is good, but it isn't always the best information for your particular situation. And that's where the attorney, your professional trusted advisor, comes into play. So please make sure that you're talking with your attorney about legal advice. Otherwise, it's we call it the unauthorized practice of law. So like I said, that's kind of one of my favorites of the do nots, is becoming the legal attorney from Google. But anyway, we're here to help you. So please let me know. Like I said, I really enjoyed having everybody here today. I hope that you found some of the information and the tips to be helpful for you. We certainly want to guide you through the process. So if you want to talk with us, just visit the link, and we're here. Does anybody have any questions about the information or the material that we've covered? I'm actually going to go ahead and do a stop share and just see if there's anybody. Any questions? Going once, going twice. Okay. I think, there's a couple of little resources. I don't want to do that, but I do want to thank everybody for coming. So I really do appreciate your time. Your time is your most valuable resource that you could share with me. So I really do appreciate you coming and spending the time with me. So please, like I said, good luck to all of you in your process. And if you have any other questions or comments or concerns, please do not hesitate to reach out for me. I'll be happy to talk with you. You can reach me at 954-734-6048. And my name is Nancy Atkins, and I'm based out of Sunrise, Florida. So thank you guys. Have a wonderful afternoon. And please let me know where I can be helpful for you. Thank you.